This is Joel Solomon of PRS and TheRoadmap, and today's session is on what we call the family bank. Let's suppose you have a higher net worth client, and this person or couple are really inclined to do more with the capital they have for those people and those things that they care about, but they don't want to necessarily give money away because they're just not sure how much they need for their own secure future. So let me share with you how we approach those clients, how we make them feel comfortable that they can actually do things with some of the excess capital that they're never going to need and lever that amount up through life insurance inside an irrevocable insurance trust, as I said, to do more for those people and those things that they care about. So let's, again, when we think about this high net worth client, what he really has, and this is the PowerPoint that we like to use when you license our materials, have different piles of money, right? And what we want to be able to identify is the pile of money that no matter what, they're truly going to die with. There is an amount. It could be 10,000, 100,000, $1 million, 5 million, but there's some amount of money they're just not going to spend. So on the day that they die, if we could identify what that pile of money is, wouldn't we want it to explode into a much larger sum, income and estate tax-free, to be able to do more for those people or things they care about? And of course, the answer is yes. So let's suppose we have a client who's got a $15 million net worth. Well, what we want to do is we want to divide it into two different sections. First, what I call me capital. How much money do I need for me, myself that is, and my spouse to live the way I want to live for the rest of my life, adjusted for inflation and based on my rate of return and longevity assumptions. Once I know that amount and I put some excess into it, in other words, I'm going to put a buffer on top of that number, I'm going to be able to identify what I call my excess capital, money that it's highly unlikely, if not impossible, that I'm ever going to need. So let's look at a couple, and let's suppose that this person is 68 years old. They want a $300,000 a year retirement income after tax, adjusting for 2.5% inflation, and that on all their capital, wherever they have somebody investing it, it can earn 4.5% after all taxes and investment expenses. Now, this is all about a quantifiable analysis that makes the client comfortable. So look, here's his $300,000 tax-free goal, adjusting for 2.5% inflation from 69 all the way to age 90. And you'll notice how these amounts go up. Cumulatively, he's got to have assets that can deliver $8.4 million of cumulative after-tax income. Again, that's based on a goal of $300,000 tax-free income growing at 2.5% inflation. So what we want to calculate, and our roadmap web-based planning tool is what created this. Just in a few inputs, it actually does this. It calculates how much capital he would need right now to be able to do it. And that answer, $5.3 million after tax, if it could earn that 4.5% net after tax and all investment expenses, it would be able to meet this retirement income goal adjusted for inflation, and at age 90, it all would be gone. So his true me capital, $5.3 million. Now, armed with that information, let's talk about what we call the family bank trust. You can call an irrevocable insurance trust anything that you want. So we'll call it the family bank trust, but it is an irrevocable life insurance trust. Let me share with you the mechanics. I don't need to convince a client to gift money. Gifting means the money is gone. I'm going to, now that I've shown him how much he truly needs for himself, which he should feel comfortable, I still don't even want him to gift it. I want him to loan it to this irrevocable trust, this family bank trust. So when he loans this money that I'll show you in a few minutes to the trust, it is an asset. That loan is an asset on his net worth statement. The trust will purchase a last to die policy. Policy cash values potentially grow inside the trust. And these cash values are actually available to pay back the client's loan if he ever wants to, in part or in whole. The trust can use these cash values during his life to buy assets for the benefit of his kids and grandchildren. And depending on how we structure the life insurance policy in the trust, even the grantor, the client's spouse, for their health, education, welfare, the assets can be used. The death benefit is owned by the trust out of the gate, income and estate tax free, and that's critical here. So we have this client with this $15 million net worth. We have already shown him he's got to reserve $5.3 million out of all of these stacks of money for himself and his spouse. This theoretically means there's $9.7 million of, quote, excess capital. The $15 million that he's got, less the $5.3 million he needs to reserve for himself, creates $9.7 million of assets it's highly unlikely he'll ever touch. So here's what we're going to do. Let's set aside this $5.3 million for me capital for him and his spouse. And let's take a piece of this excess capital. In fact, let's take $7.7 million more of this $9.7 million and reserve it for him and his spouse. So instead of just reserving $5.3 million of me capital, I'm now reserving $13 million of me capital. Think about that. 2.5 times the amount that he needs to reserve for himself and his family, which we quantitatively proved to him. Then what I want to do with this extra $2 million that's left over, right? Because if he has a $15 million net worth and I'm reserving $13 million for him, I've got $2 million left over. I am going to loan it to this trust over a 5-year period to create his family bank, and I'm going to lever that money up to buy $10 million of last to die insurance. So take a look. Here's a index universal life approach to purchasing the policy. You can use any approach you want. And here what I've done is I've allocated 25% of the money to the fixed account, in this particular case 3.6%, 75% of the premium into a S&P index at 6.9. What I can tell you, over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the S&P has returned considerably more than that number, and that's without dividends. But let's not spend time debating on the right crediting rates to show this is just what I've assumed here. So notice that I've assumed that the client and his spouse are the same age. We're going to take $400,000 year one. He's going to loan it to the family bank trust, that irrevocable life insurance trust. That trustee is going to use that money and purchase a $10 million last to die policy. So over a 5-year period, the client puts in, lends to the trust $2 million. The trustee takes the $2 million, buys the policy. And by the way, we've got $1.9 million of cash that's available that the trustee could use in whole or in part for the needs of generation 2 and 3. Kids need a house. The trustee literally could go in here, take $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, borrow it from the policy, and let the trust actually own that house for the benefit of the kids. But if you look at this over a 5-year period, and then I looked at the cash going 15 years downstream, I would have somewhere between $3 and $3.6 million of cash value. I'd have a $10 million death benefit. And if I look at age 87, if both husband and wife died at 87, based on the amount of money that I put in and the way I put it in, the internal rate of return on that invested capital, if both died by 87, would be 9.31 income and estate tax-free. What rate of return would you have to earn on that money every year, pay income tax at capital gains rates, and estate tax at 40% to net 9.31? You're probably looking at well in excess of a 20% annual return if this money was invested somewhere else and not levered up in the way that I've done it here, creating insurance that is income and estate tax free. Pretty dramatic rate of return. Even if they both die at 92, we're generating a 7.23 after income tax and after estate tax rate of return. Awfully powerful story. And I want to remind everybody that this money that's in the policy, right? So if I looked at this cash, just take a look one more time. If I looked at this cash that's sitting here, so we've got $2.5 million plus or minus year 10. The client has loaned $2 million to this irrevocable trust. Client wants to get back $1 million. Trustee merely goes in here, withdraws $1 million, and pays down the loan. The client gets that money back. This is Joel Solomon of PRS discussing today the Family Bank Trust, where we lever up a loan from a client to an ILET and purchase way more income and estate tax-free life insurance. Thank you.